Do you remember how you felt during the onset of COVID? I remember feeling fear and helplessness. The silence of the streets ringing loudly in my ears. I felt like I needed to do something. More importantly, I thought I was capable of doing something. I used to ask myself, what are all my engineering skills good for if I cannot utilize them to help anyone in this situation? But there was nothing that I thought I could do at that time. I used to think of myself as a problem-solving guy. And here I was, faced with a problem where people were losing their loved ones. And there was nothing I could do about it. Absolutely nothing. I felt a strong desire to give back to humanity. That's when I came across this article in New York Times. There are not enough ventilators to cope up with coronavirus. And that was the moment when I realized, that's it. I'll design ventilators. I knew nothing about them. In the matter of next 6 weeks, with my 10 years of experience in automotive engineering and design, and with the help of medical experts and my friends at local clinics, I taught myself to design and fabricate a ventilator from scratch. As I was nearing completion, I performed several tests using an artificial lung, and the initial results looked promising. Finally, I needed one small part, a part measuring less than an inch, a flow sensor that would measure the flow rate of oxygen running through the pipes to finish my testing, get certified, and produce at scale. How hard it could be for me to get this part? Well, I contacted 50 different vendors in China, India, Taiwan, Korea, had over 200 email exchanges, made hundreds of calls, but I just couldn't find the part that would match my exact specifications. I spent next 4 weeks trying to go back and forth with potential vendors and looking for that part. Interestingly, everyone I spoke with told me in the beginning, oh, we have that part. But only it would take a few conversations, after which I will realize that they didn't have the exact match. Finally, I exhausted all my options, and I came to the realization that was it. I won't be able to bring ventilator to market in time. I knew that part existed, but I just didn't know how to find it or where to look for. That's when I realized I had ran into a larger issue, the global issue of supply chain. We often call it dreaded issue of supply chain. I decided to dig in. When we talk about supply chain, we are mainly talking about two challenges. I call them data and incentives. Let's talk about data. The issue with the supply chain is that it's so massive and complex that it's impossible to wrap our head around it, let alone resolve it. A simple part, such as a jewelry that you might be wearing, or the chair that you are sitting on right now, can go through at least 15 unique entities before it reaches the final customers. None of them may be connected with each other. These entities may include original material supplier, the factories, the raw material supplier, the secondary supplier, machine shop, paint shop, welding shop, airport customs, shipping, and so on. All of these people manage their data in their own way. As a result, data is all over the place. So we just don't know where our part is. There is no single consolidated source of information for our part. And that leads to all sorts of issues, such as insufficient product planning, delayed product launches, and ultimately lost revenues. Then comes the issue of incentives. Now, the issue of incentives is slightly harder to understand. It's deeply embedded into the process of procurement itself. So to understand this, let us go through a process of procurement for a large company. To procure a part, the step one is supplier identification. The large company, in this step, tries to identify who will be a good fit for this design. They do everything like looking through the existing catalogs of suppliers and Google searches. Then comes the step two of supplier assessment. In this system, you are looking through what kind of machines these suppliers have got. You do physical checks. In other way, you do supplier audits. What machines they have got, what tolerances they can achieve, what people they have, what certification they have, what processes they have, what culture they have. You're trying to assess whether this is a good fit or not. Finally, in the step three, once you know who is the supplier and if they are capable or not, you get into the project discussion phase where you are actually discussing engineering details, manufacturing details, design, price negotiation, and so on. And then the order is placed, and the manufacturing begins. So far, so good. Now let's talk about what this process looks like for a small company. They skip second step. While the large company has all kind of money and resources to fly and go to China and do the supplier audits, figure out whether they are the true fit or not, small companies just don't. Instead, they rely on video calls or a few meetings to assess their capabilities before they deep dive into the discussion phase. Now, skipping step two allows the suppliers the freedom to say whatever they want. They can promise, we got this. Now, don't get me wrong. The suppliers are trying to act in good faith. But there's really no incentive for them in the system if they don't have the actual capability to say that, no, we cannot do that. If they say so, they lose the entire order. So they make no money. As a result, they try to produce the part, and they often fail in delivering the quality. That results in sub-quality parts, and then they try to correct it. And the cycle keeps on repeating. That's how a lot of small companies and startups bleed money in trying to make the quality parts and then making correction. Quality parts, correction. By the way, the reason I'm talking about small companies, 98.6% of American manufacturing companies are small businesses. It's quite relevant here. All right. So there's data all over the place, and the incentives don't line up. So what do we do about it? Well, imagine a system where suppliers could say the truth about themselves, their true capabilities. A system that will not punish them for their weaknesses, rather reward them for what they have to offer. If we have all the data about the suppliers, we can use the AI to find the customers whose needs perfectly line up with what this supplier has to offer. That will not only solve these challenges, but also unlock new opportunities for suppliers. In fact, it will lead to limitless growth for the supplier. But we have to provide that incentive. With such a resilient system in place, it will also be easier to integrate new suppliers on board. The entire world depends on just 15 manufacturing countries for their manufacturing needs. And we are 195 nations on Earth. So with this robust system in place, we'll be better prepared for both man-made or natural disasters, such as wars, earthquakes, or even a pandemic. So while the technology is possible, there's a deeper ask here. This system requires psychological shift, a shift from being opaque to being transparent, a shift from being short-term gain-driven to long-term growth-driven. If we can get there, then we can let the technology, so-called AI, to take over and do its magic. Without that, it's not going to happen. So as the future technologies such as AI becomes inevitable, In the spirit of creating meaningful change, I call upon you, as current and future builders of this planet, to champion transparency. Just as a quest for a small component could mean a difference between life and death, as we saw in the ventilator example, this commitment has the power to save lives, safeguard organizations, and shape tomorrow's world. Thank you.